Hello, friends. Welcome to the Millennials and Insurance. This is to understand the impact that millennials have on the insurance industry. Now, before we jump in, wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping items just to make sure that you get credit for your continuing education participation today. So throughout the presentation, we will be asking just a couple of questions in our QA form, which you have right here on the top right-hand corner of our platform today. We're going to ask you a couple of questions just halfway through the presentation, nothing too hard, so don't worry about that. And then we'll ask you some additional questions at the very end of the presentation just to make sure that you made it through all the way through the presentation today. In addition to that, probably by close of business today, we're going to be sending you a continuing education participation form, and it's very simple, and this is to ensure that you get credit for your continuing education participation today. All we need from you is your first and last name, your insurance license, your signature, and ensure that you send us the form back no later than 5/24. That's Tuesday next week. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's jump right in. So let's talk a little bit about millennials and some of their basically mannerisms and buying power. And so let's first establish who exactly are these millennials? Who are these people we keep talking about? So actually, millennials are those aged from between 25 and 40, and they happen to be the largest generation in history. As a matter of fact, we happen to have 72 million millennials in the US alone. And that represents, again, like I said, the largest generation in history. They also come with quite a tremendous buying power. Approximately $1 trillion in purchasing power, to be almost exact. And so let's talk a little bit more about, some of the things that they do and how they approach the market or consumerism when it comes to the way that they look at insurance. And so not only are they the largest generation, but they're also one of the largest workforce as well. They represent 41% of the workforce, or basically 4 out of 10 of our coworkers happen to be a millennial. And so you can either look to your left or look to your right, and you're probably looking right at a millennial. And so let's talk a little bit about that. And so we said that they do make a tremendous portion of our population today, and approximately 25% of the world's population today. So they basically dominate the consumer mindset. And so what we mean by that is basically, whether it's business, retail, restaurants, online, and even financial institutions, all focus on the way that they do business based on the way that millennials, again, our largest consumers out there, want to do things today. And so mostly, millennials look at, in the way that they do business with people as somewhat a negative thing. But don't worry, guys, we do have a positive nugget for you from that. And so one of their main things that they're dissatisfied with is customer service. And so that's really one of the things that we want to change when it comes to the way that we do business with our millennials, with our friends and family that happen to be millennials, because ultimately one of the things that they're looking for is trust and great customer service. Now let's jump into a little more regarding the way that millennials do business. Like I said, the power of millennials cannot be overlooked, okay? They're a tremendous force to be reckoned with, okay? And so when we're looking at millennials, and as I stated before, even the insurance industries, they anticipate future shifts based on millennial preferences. And so let's talk about that a little bit. From a customer experience, and I know we're going to say millennials maybe 100 more times today, we also kind of have all transformed to some extent, whether you're a Gen Z, a Gen X, or even the silent generation, have all kind of to some extent transformed the way that we do business to assimilate very much what millennials do today. And so we really have to focus on the customer experience when it comes to millennials. Now let's talk about response in advertising. Back in the day growing up, advertising in a magazine was a big deal. Billboards were a big deal. The way that they advertised or placed things out there into the world were basically, in your face, magazines, flyers, the newspaper. Can you imagine that? So these were all the ways that we used to do things. But nowadays, we're talking about technology. We're talking about social media. We're talking about Facebook. We're talking about Snapchat, dare I say that as well. We're talking about TikTok. So TikTok is not just for these fun dances, but they're also a great avenue to reach our millennials, our consumers, and put out great content and information because, believe it or not, they're looking at things on their phone constantly, whether it's their phone, their tablet, their laptop, or any technology avenue or methodology to basically inform themselves. And so, millennials, they really actually enjoy the opportunity to have all their options in front of them at their fingertips. And so just to kind of give you an example here, they enjoy the Amazon style buying. And so what we mean by that is that it's all available in one nice, neat place. And so, you have to think about it from an insurance perspective as an agent. When millennials go to these platforms where they can select multiple insurances, where they can select multiple plan options and make a comparison all there at the same time. And so, that's one of the key things to being able to understand a millennial and the way they do things. It's no longer the day of cold calling. And so us as agents, we do not enjoy cold calling. But guess what? Millennials also do not enjoy to receive a cold call. They feel distrust and they feel a sense of basically coldness or disconnection. And so, back in the day when we didn't have cell phones, well, that was the way that we communicated. We communicated via a cold call, and we would receive a call from a consumer, or from whatever organization trying to reach out to us, whether it be to inform us or to provide us the opportunity to purchase what they may be selling. But in today's world, the millennial has changed that environment. That landscape no longer exists. They actually look at that as rude. They feel that their day is being interrupted, and that you, the cold caller, are being selfish and reaching out and trying to interrupt their day without first announcing yourself. So they compare that similar to basically somebody knocking on their door unannounced. And so cold calling is not the way to do these things nowadays. And so we'll get into that just a little bit later. The most traditional practices seen nowadays, back in the day, are seen somewhat as obstacles. And so let's talk about what they perceive to be as obstacles and the way that we need to change the way we do business in order to be able to even compete for a millennial's business. And so, nobody likes to wait around, particularly millennials. And, a big part of that is that, when I think back in the day, we were the first ones to try out and open up and have the technology and information right at our fingertips. For example, I happen to be one of those very same people that tried out America Online, AOL, and that's long gone. And nowadays we're talking about Google. And so, I'm able to reach out to organizations via email and get instant responses. I'm able to reach out to organizations and chat with their customer service directly, and in a non-committal way, be able to get the information that I'm looking for. And so the days of, pulling up to a financial institution or to an insurance office, while still present, it's not the way of the future, and millennials are shaping that. And so nobody wants to, go have to drive to an office, pull into an insurance agency or the financial institution, jot their name down on a wait list, and then wait to be called on. So that's an obstacle for us as insurance agents when it comes to the millennials, is that we really have to have that electronic footprint and the ability to be available without having to make these consumers wait. They feel that it's to some extent an inconvenience, and they do not want to have to deal with, getting up and going somewhere without being informed. And so they want to have this information up front. They don't want to have to wait. They see it as an inconvenience to walk in somewhere uninformed and possibly be sold. Let's face it, guys, none of us like to be sold. We would prefer to be informed and then have somebody as a sounding board to be able to make these decisions. And so, one of those things that is antiquated is paper forms, and that's also seen as a challenge or an obstacle, especially in today's world when you go onto a web page and our browser's already, predicting what we're typing in. I can put in the first 2 or 3 letters of my name, and it's auto-populating my name, my address, my phone number, my email, all the things that need to be completed in an application versus having to fill out a paper application, and then guess what? It's filled out incorrectly, it has to be redone, the order can't be taken because these paper forms are either outdated, incomplete, and they're not able to move forward with their transaction. So these are all things that, they see as outdated and that they do not really like. Customer service, let's talk about that for a minute. And so, Yes, back in the day, and still today with many companies, but again, changing more and more each day, is the approach to customer service. And so having to call somewhere to sit on a line, wait to get the response, I am number umpteenth, waiting in line for X amount of minutes before I'm serviced or my questions are answered. And my question may be very easy in nature. And so they prefer the ability to access, immediate answers, responses, so they can proceed with their search for information so that they can make a decision. Now, with that being said, also, there's kind of a contradiction here. And so millennials, as a matter of fact, have a tremendous distrust for large organizations, financial institutions, and some of that has to do with the way that they grew up. And so let's elaborate on that a little bit. Think of you being in your early 15 years of age or so, 20 years of age, or even younger than that, and seeing mom and dad, think about in the 2000s, in the early 2000s, or even late 2000s, in the downturn of the economy, with us being blessed today with a much better position, loans were being denied. Loans were being placed on hold. Lines of credit were being placed on stop. Your financial institution placing on hold of your mortgage, or your home mortgage being upside down, where the values of the loan outweighed the value of the home itself. And so that created a tremendous amount of distrust as the millennials grew up. And so in today's world, millennials actually look at these what are known as mega organizations, where they're the key player either in whatever arena that they're in, specifically to my example today, in the main 4 or 5 financial institutions. And the reason for that has a lot to do with their response time, their involvement in the community, as well as, you got it, the technology footprint. So that's a tremendous thing that, drives their connection to some of these organizations. And so these smaller, more boutique companies suffer from seeing millennials consume from them, because they don't have a way to connect, as well as, again, time, speed, efficiency has a big player to do with that. And so the last thing I want to talk about is the multiple options, and we kind of mentioned that in their buying style, is the ability to have all the options in front of them without having an outsider sway their decision or being sold into what it is that they want to proceed with in terms of what they want to purchase. Particularly with insurance benefits, they want to look at what's covered, at what cost, where does that cover me, and when I actually render the service, what's going to be the outcome of these things. And so these are all things that they're looking for up front. They don't want to have to experience it before they know what the outcomes are going to be. And so from that perspective, this is what, our millennials buying style and consumerism is. And so these are the ways, as an insurance agent or as an insurance carrier, or even as an organization in general that provides a product out into the world, into this tremendous population known as our millennials, that we have to take into consideration. And so today we're going to talk about 6 ways that we've adjusted to the millennials from a buying perspective when it comes to insurance. So the first one we want to talk about is investment in technology. And so this is really a big one for us. And so, as I previously mentioned, our millennials have a tremendous footprint when it comes to technology. They've started, playing with technology from a very early onset, whether it was us as parents handing over our iPhone for them to start playing with the phones, or for them to be able to take pictures, or for them to be able to save their files, or for them to be able to simply chat with their friends at school, and nowadays especially being able to, reach out to others. And so, when we were kids back in the day, it was basically, the kids that you played with that were in your neighborhood. And so that's changed to some extent today. Specifically with technology, being able to FaceTime, reach out via Skype or Teams, and any of these other avenues, such as on the go conversations, that we didn't have that before. And so the early onset of technology and their early adapters actually caused the coined term of digital natives. And so basically, they've been seeing technology for a long time, and they're able to adapt to new platforms. They're able to adapt to new pages. They're able to adapt to a quicker technology. And really what they're focused on is user friendliness. And so, really what the platform or user interface needs to be for our millennials is the ability to go from one page to another. So it needs to be intuitive. So not only do they have to have access to this information quickly, robustly, but intuitively as well. So, it needs to have some sort of workflow when it comes to the way that they look at a page. It has to be easily calling out to what's next. And so I have this bit of information. What is it that I should know next? And so our technology, whether it's a mobile app, whether it's a mobile friendly site, whether it's the site itself, needs to be user friendly. It needs to be intuitive. It needs to be sequential. And guess what? It needs to be on the go as well. In addition to that, millennials really have a different way of thinking when it comes to environment. And to some extent, they try to keep environment in everything that they do. They're actually some of our biggest and earliest recyclers when it comes to our environment. And so they really look at technology as a, yes, convenience, but it's also another great way to save the planet and also help save resources. And so, you're going to learn this about our millennials, and which is a great way of thinking, is that you really need to stretch the dollar, whether it's for your benefits, whether it's for consumerism, whether it's for resources. It's a big thing for them. And so one of those things that we talked about earlier is being able to have a tremendous reach out to others in their community, to their friends, to the people that they can do consumerism with or who they do business with. And so it's not just enough to be able to have them at their fingertip, but it's also the ability to discuss things. Let me give you an example. I've adapted some of this myself. Not a millennial, close, but I'm a big gearhead, and one of those things that I do today are look into those forums for, how to fix the engine, or does anybody know about the replacement part? And so back in the day, in order to do that, we would have to look at these, large stacks of paper, these, vehicle parts and repair manuals. And I wouldn't be able to get the answer that I needed very quickly. But in today's world, you're able to do things such as control find. You're able to look up keywords. You're able to reach out to experts that are online that can help you get the responses that you're looking for. So let's just kind of tie that back to the way that we talk about insurance today. They can simply ask, questions like, well, how does a PPO work versus an HMO, or how does this plan work over that plan? I have a particular condition that that I'm dealing with. Is this covered? Is there a limitation towards that? What's this sort of thing going to cost me? And they're able to reach out to these forums, online, communities that they can seek either somebody that they can relate to, an expert, and so that is really a huge piece of the technology that I think all of us at this point have that thirst for in our day and age, but particularly driven by the way that millennials look at things and that the way that they drive consumerism today. And so again, the first thing that we want to take into consideration is technology. And just to touch on that again, they're quick to look at the information at their fingertips. They want it to be easily available. They want it to be robust and informative. And they want to have some sort of workflow that allows them to get a comparison from one item to the other. The next thing that millennials help drive and change in our world today is convenience. And so now we're talking about, to some extent, customer service. But again, I touched on it before, is how quickly can they make decisions? And so not only is it important to have all the information at their fingertips, but us as carriers, agents, the way that we do business also need to take into consideration the platforms and the tools that we're providing to our consumers. And big piece, as we know, the millennials are looking for easy, intuitive resources to be able to transact on. And so, companies today are looking at their own systems, and they're investing millions of dollars basically updating their outdated systems, and in many cases looking for vendors that are able to accomplish exactly that by replacing their old systems transitioning the information that they have from their old systems into their new systems versus spending endless dollars into updating their antiquated systems. And so that's exactly what the millennial is looking for, is the ability to do business quickly, beautifully, and like I stated before, be able to make a decision rather quickly. And so in part, you also have to think that these systems need to also have a back-end support. And so it's not just great to have this beautiful page, this beautiful tool, this beautiful mobile app, but it's also important that you have somebody managing, maintaining, and responding to our consumers, right? And so these millennials are basically giving us the feedback and going into these systems and coming back and letting us know, you know, if this page had this, or if it could do that, or if I was able to see this. That's our responsibility as agents, carriers, etc., or even consumers in general, companies in general, to provide this sort of information to our millennials. And so, as I stated, it's equally as important to have that back-end support. And so as they're, coming to our pages, coming to our sites, they need to be able to have a response immediately. If the chat comes in, they don't want to be a part of a queue where they're waiting on somebody to come and respond, or, they're not looking to go to a chat that then turns into an email. They're looking to chat. And so that's utmost convenience for them. They may already be at the, car lot. They may already be at the hospital. They may already be at the dining table at the restaurant, and they want to be able to look at all these different things right then and there. And so in many cases, they want to be able to make a decision on the spot. And in particular, when it comes to insurance, some of us may look at it as it's just insurance. But when we look at it holistically, we're really looking at it as it's our health. And so that's a big piece of the way that our millennials look at, convenience, is that, God forbid something does happen and there is some sort of accident, they need to be able to either place a claim, know what's covered, make a decision on the spot. And in many cases, they're already at the doctor's office, and they want to be able to know that they're being treated fairly, according to their plan, and according to their coverage. And the only way they can do that is if they have that information at their fingertips. And so, they look at businesses, and they say, their systems are not up to date, and if they're not willing to be up to date and cater to, having a easy, user-friendly, quick, responsive system, then, well, what's my experience going to be like? And again, tying that into to their customer experience. And so, we talk about this term known as Simplex, and it's basically a simple, easy user interface with a changeable back end. And so whatever that they're looking at today, if they're going and looking at the reviews and the consumer is saying, if we had this and we had that, and then all of a sudden they go and engage on the actual page and see that the change has been made, they'll be able to see that, yes, they're getting the convenience that they're looking for, and that the company is keeping up, one, with the times, and two, with their needs. And so with that, I just wanted to talk to you guys about item number 3, customer-oriented focus, right? They're focused on the way that they do business. And so what is it that attracts millennials to companies and who they do business with? And so, millennials, just like all of us, particularly them, they want it good, they want it cheap, they want it fast. And that's how they expect to do business with us. Okay, and so the good service part is creating a connection. Okay, it's all about the experience. Okay, and so our millennials, our neighbors, our coworkers that are millennials are looking to have a great experience because, as I stated before, they're more informed than ever. And that stands true. We've all have, and actually in today's day and age, believe this or not, over 67% of the consumers have some sort of mobile device. And so with their mobile device, their smartphone, they're able to go ahead and look up reviews, look up experience, look up the product, look up the members' footprint with the company, what the company's doing for the community. And so they already come to the table with all this information in terms of what's out there. They've already done the side-by-side comparison. And so They want a good experience from a consumer perspective because they already know the information, and so now they're looking to be treated well, they're looking to be engaged, and they're looking to be inquired on as to what they're looking for to provide them some guidance. Okay, not only do they want a great experience, but they want a fast delivery. Okay, and so just kind of a statement to the beginning of our conversation today. We said that they do not like to receive phone calls, okay, because they look at it as rude and unannounced, very much like somebody showing up to your door unannounced, letting you know that, hey, I'm coming over. Well, they look at it, phone calls, as that. However, on the opposite side of the spectrum, when they're looking to reach out, they want us to be available. And so from an insurance agent perspective, from a consultant perspective, from a carrier perspective, they want us to be there. And so how do they want us to be there? Well, they want us to be there via email. And no, they don't want to wait 3-4 days for their response. They want a response within 24 hours on their emails. They want a response immediately via chat. In some cases, they want a response overnight. And so they want to have, fast delivery to their inquiries. And so for most part, alongside with their education that they provide themselves by the consumerism via their, technology, they want to have the ability to have a response quickly. And so kind of the key thing to the way that millennials communicate with us is they only communicate with us when they need us. Sounds selfish, but it's not, quite frankly. It's actually a great way to communicate. And they're very directed in their conversation because they already have the facts. And so, not only do they want it good and they want it fast, but they want it cheap too. And so, like I mentioned before, they're a very savvy consumer. They are always looking at, the cost of things and weighing the cost. Now, yes, cheap, but in many cases, if the case doesn't fit, they're willing to make the expense, or they're willing to pay for the cost, so long as it's the right fit. And so I just wanted to really talk to you guys again about the 3 key ways to engage with our millennials when it comes to the consumerism. And again, they want it good, they want it fast, and they want it cheap. And they also want to engage. And so one of the things that they look at when they're doing business with organizations is their social engagement. And so I mentioned this earlier on in our conversation. We have well over 40 million millennials on Snapchat. And so, if you are a financial institution, if you are an insurance agent, if you are an insurance carrier, or just a business in general, and you're targeting this demographic, you better have some social media. And so we'll talk to you a little bit about some of the stats regarding the number 1, number 2, and number 3 media outlets that they engage in to judge exactly how it is that you do business. And so, not only is it enough that you're out there in social media, but how are you engaging socially with the environment and those out there? And so, are you a part of a community effort, or are you just in it for profit? As the millennials don't look at that as good business. They look at good business as, what is your involvement with the community? What are you giving back? And how are you making it so that we all can continue to consume and move on for the long term? Whereas they frown upon organizations that are basically in it for profit. And so, like I said before, those mega organizations, it's a hit or miss for you. And you have to have that social footprint and have that connection with the community. And that is what should be driving your success as an organization in order to really win over our millennials. And so, just touching back to a couple of things that we talked about when it comes to the way that they do business, they like personalized business. Okay. And by that we mean, think about the times that you go out to a restaurant and the waiter remembers your name, and they don't even let your cup get a quarter empty. They fill you right back up. And so they want the same experience when it comes to insurance. And so they're filling out these questionnaires, they're filling out these intuitive online forms, and then comes the part where they have to make a commitment. And in many cases, they have to engage some of us seasoned experts, regarding making a decision. And so, like I said before, they like to engage us as seasoned experts to make a decision and use us as a sounding board. However, the personalized service experience comes with us listening. So the key to, really winning over our millennials is listening and understanding what their needs are. And so we're getting a lot of this information electronically, and so we have to some extent read between the lines and understand that if they responded, no, they haven't been to the doctor in 2 or 3 years, then we have to kind of look at what type of plan may suit their needs from a preventive care perspective, or what their personalized needs are, so that when we engage in conversation and we become their sounding boards, we're providing personalized responses versus just giving them some sort of stock plan or general population plan. They want to know why it is that this is a good fit for me based on my responses to you as the agent, the carrier, or the institution that I'm doing business with. And so with that, I just want to move on. But before we move on, I wanted to engage everybody on the first set of questions. And so we had a couple of items that we discussed that we really drove home earlier on in our conversation. And so we're going to go ahead and post these questions in our Q&A at this time. And so here's what I need from you. If you could go ahead and answer to your Q&A questions, as we will be taking the transcript of the questions as evidence of response and engagement in our session today. And so go ahead in your Q&A session, answer to the first 2 questions that we're presenting. And the first question on deck is, what age range is our millennials? Don't worry, guys. I'll give you guys another minute or so to go ahead and place your responses, and then I'll go ahead and present question number 2. All right, and question number 2, it's a true or false. And it's actually a 2-part question here for you. Oh, excuse me, that'll be question 3 and 4. My apologies. Question number 2. What are millennials most dissatisfied with? We'll give everybody a chance to go ahead and place their responses right into the Q&A. And again, like I said, we'll go ahead and use the Q&A as our transcript for engagement in our conversation today. All right, guys, great engagement, great attendance this afternoon, and so I think that now we'll go ahead and move on. However, you still have the opportunity to place your responses if you haven't done so in our Q&A chat, and we'll go from there. And so the 4th item when it comes to engaging our millennials is trustworthy institutions. Okay, and so they are looking for established, well-engaged institutions when it comes to who they do business with. Okay, they're not looking for fly-by-night mom and pop shops. They're looking for organizations that engage with their consumers. And so remember, are educated and they want to be engaged. And so, like I said before, they want the truth. Okay, and so the way that millennials look at things are if, for example, if they get information that is incorrect, not only do they lose trust, but they actually amplify inaccuracies, and they will reach out to the organizations to get these inaccuracies completely changed. They need to correct these things. They're looking out for others. Okay, so that's, our millennials are out there trying to make sure that they don't want things negatively happening to them or their family or their friends. They want to make sure that everybody is being treated equally, fairly, and that everybody's getting the same exact responses. And so versus blowing things off, they actually engage organizations to correct things, rectify things, clarify items, and make sure that the business is doing things correctly and that other consumers don't fall into some sort of pitfall where they're, being sold something that was not exactly what was promised. And so, that's key to building trust with our millennials. And not only that, but they also do business with organizations that are inclusive. They do not like it so that it's just for me, but not for you. They like to ensure that the organizations that they do business with have a tremendous sense of inclusion, and that they have a freedom of choice, flexibility, the ability to re-engage with the very same organizations that they do business with, and that they're felt welcomed back after they've made a purchase with the business. And again, the same things apply that, well, I've consumed once with you, but I should be looked at as part of the family now, not just another consumer. And so when I come back a second, third, fourth, or umpteenth times as a repeat customer or as a current customer, I need to be felt welcomed back, and that my business, regardless if I am the major consumer or a minor consumer, or if I am, a small product purchaser, whatever the case might be, regardless of the product, I want to be treated just like a VIP, regardless of who I am, what age I am, what color of skin I am, what background I have. We're all exactly the same. And so, that helps build a sense of trustworthiness as an institution, and inclusivity is really what they're looking for when it comes to becoming consumers for any particular agency. And so they trust agency advocates and online interviews, and they prefer interviews from people who they don't know, as opposed to people that work for that company. And so when they're engaging with any particular institution, reviews are a big deal, guys. Whether it's a Google rating, whether it is reviews online, whether it's for the product, whether it's for the benefit, whether it's for just how they do business. And so, they're big into looking at Glassdoor. They're big into looking at the reviews. And I gave you some examples as to where they look for the institutions and the way that they engage with the customer and what the customers and consumers are saying about that. So if your organization or the organizations that you're doing business with, or the carrier that you're doing business with, or the financial institution that you're doing business with does not have reviews where our millennials can go and take a look at what the outcomes are and what consumers or their peers are saying, they're less likely to do business with you because, well, you don't have reviews and others aren't providing testimonials to their experience, which is a big piece of the way that they do business today, as I previously stated, because there's just no footprint there. And so, organizations need to do everything possible to create a level of customer satisfaction, whether it's by the product, by the service, by the engagement, by the technology, ending and resulting in positive results from a review perspective. So preference for impactful, authentic stories about businesses are big for our, millennials. And so I'll give you an example, of a couple of organizations that many financial institutions, insurances, retailers do business with, and that are charitable, such as the American Heart Association, to name one. And these are all, national organizations that are giving back, that are, providing to the greater cause of humanity, and organizations that are providing humanitarian efforts are a big piece of who they do business with, because they feel that they too could be in a position that unfortunately some of us can't help, whether it is poverty and feeding the homeless, saving our environment, research into further developing medicine, and those are typically the more successful and consumed businesses by our millennials. And the reason for that is because they are trustworthy and create a footprint for themselves that allows the millennials to investigate, look into how they do business, who are they serving versus serving themselves, and that is key to building trust with our millennials. Let's move on to the next key. Let's talk about, embracing their lifestyle and how they do business. In today's world, we really do have to change the way that we do business. And so the way that millennials do business today is ever changing. And so if we were having this conversation, let's say 5 years ago, we might say from statistics that millennials are more finicky in terms of making commitments to buying homes or purchasing a car, and their lifestyle at the time may have been more focused on the greater good, saving our environment, creating a long-term environment, not just for themselves, but the children and for their future. But now looking 5 years later, their lifestyle has changed to some extent. And as a matter of fact, pretty close to 45% of our millennials today own a home. And so for us as agents, carriers or financial institutions, we have to look at it as, their world is changing today. Their consumerism was one way 5-10 years ago. And as life events start to happen, as unions amongst couples begin to happen, as we start to think about our later years in life, our consumerism begins to change. And so millennials not only look at that from a investment perspective, but they also start now to look at, or are starting to now look at, well, what do our benefits do for us now that, I'm not young and invincible as I used to be. Now that I am now settled down, I'm making long-term purchases and commitments. I'm beginning to have families. And even for some of those younger millennials, these are things that they're already taking into consideration, thinking for the long term. And so, we need to start thinking about catering to their needs when it comes to these sort of statements. And so, for example, you may be thinking of a renter's policy or an individual policy for younger millennials, but you might be thinking for a family policy or a homeowner's policy or major medical policy for millennials. And again, thinking back to their experience and catering to their habits, a big piece of it has to do with the way that they do business and their personalized experience. So, they look at it as one size does not fit all. I am unique in the way that I approach the market. I am my own individual, and I would like to see a policy that fits my needs or my family's needs based on what I've provided you. And so again, we really want to look at it from a not one size fits all perspective, which is a big deal for us. And so from an independent insurance agent perspective, it's all about connecting with our millennials. And so let me just kind of, talk about this for a few moments with the distrust of organizations or financial institutions by our millennials. Here's a great nugget for us as independent or exclusive agents, is that while they come to the table with all the information already, they're going to use us as sounding boards because we are seasoned, tenured agents. And so it really falls on us to ensure that we're engaging in a comfortable, informative, consultative session with our millennials so that they, can make the best possible decision. And so that is your opportunity now to ensure that you're giving them the right information, giving them the appropriate experience so that they can then lean on you to bring them past the finish line. And so that's a big deal for our millennials. And so The reason I bring that up is because 55% of the millennials actually ignore brands. You know, they don't, look at smaller brands. Basically, back to the technology discussion we were having earlier. If they look up, ABC Insurance, ABC Bank, whatever the organization, and it doesn't show up on the first page or in the first line items of that search, they're not going to do business with you. And so you, as the independent agent, insurance agent, it's your job to have that network research, that market research that you can bring back to the table and say, I work with the following organizations. Here's what they stand for. Here's their position in the community. Here is their electronic footprint. And here's my suggestion as to how this fits your particular needs. And so, again, that's the knowledge nugget that I provide you is, again, I'll repeat that for you. It's your job to go out there and do the homework for those, smaller benefit retailer organizations that may not show up or pop up on our millennials searches on the front page. But based on their experience with you, they're likely to do business with you based on what you're providing them. And so that's your opportunity to provide them some very reasonable, affordable, again, good, quick, cheap solutions that they're going to lean on you for. And if what you're delivering to them lines up with their own research and education, they're more likely to do business with you and proceed to cross the finish line. And another thing is that not only do they want it good, quick, and cheap, but one of the millennial habits is to be able to see this information in writing in advance of proceeding with their decision making. And so, if they can't find it online and they don't like the digital presence, they're likely to move on. And so part of the digital presence is not just a sequential way of proceeding with looking at business, but also a informative and document-filled information on your pages. And so, believe it or not, our millennials love to go down to the bottom of the page and look at the contact us. They like to look at the policy information. They like to read the little fine print. And so that only comes with the nature of the way that they were raised to take advantage of all this information that's been handed to them at their fingertips, versus back in the day where, we didn't look at the stuff until we signed a dozen signatures on the line for our policies. They like to be able to see this, and, I guess in short words, proof is in the pudding. And so just to wrap it up, let's talk about utilizing social media, which is our sixth way we've adjusted to millennials. And so now let's talk about, the way that they engage. And I'm going to provide you some pretty cool stats when it comes to the way that they engage with social media and the way that they leverage technology to do business with us today. And so let's start off with the top social media platforms when it comes to doing business with our millennials. And we have them here on this page here for you, but I wanted to give you some really cool numbers. And so as a matter of fact, if you want to do business with a millennial, and one of the quickest ways for them to, pass judgment on the businesses that they engage are via LinkedIn. So as a matter of fact, 87 million millennials are registered and logged in to LinkedIn, and 38% of them use LinkedIn to even make decisions and look at who the decision makers are and who leads those organizations that make the decisions for those organizations before they proceed to do business with. So I thought that was a very interesting thing for us in our consumerism today, that we need to kind of put those things out there, because of course in our LinkedIn profiles, not only do we provide our professional profile, our experience, but who are we associated with? Who are we connected with? Who do we do business with? Who are those people that do business with us? Another one here we have is YouTube. And so, I think about this a little bit. Myself, I'm somewhat of a handyman. As I said earlier to you guys, I'm a bit of a gearhead. And so while I do have a technical background before my 15 years in the insurance industry, if I would have had YouTube the way that YouTube has been developed today, I sure would have fixed more engines, and I certainly would have built more stuff. My wife certainly would have been happier. And so, again, the same thing when it comes to our millennials. They're looking at, what does this organization, this carrier, this retailer, this insurance company stand for? Who does this agent work with? What history do they have from a YouTube perspective? And so, YouTube is a great way for those do-it-yourselfers, for those looking to find out more information. And as a matter of fact, when you look at YouTube is one of the biggest avenues for consumers, particularly millennials, to go and look at comparison between one organization to the other. Not only just the comparison, but how does this work? How does a DHMO work? How does a PPO work? How does my co-payment work? How does a deductible work? And so they're looking at all these things right on social media, and YouTube is a great way to find not just consumers, but also organizations explaining the way that these things work. Another way, and a huge social media footprint today, is Twitter. And as a matter of fact, I think that Twitter just updated their characters allowed for their message from, I believe, 180 to 280 characters allowed to get your message across. And so they look at the way that we, carriers, agents, brokers, retailers, hospitals, whoever it might be, engages on Twitter and announces anything new that's going on that allows them as consumers to know, well, this new latest and greatest thing that's hip and happening that allows me to better engage. And then another avenue that we don't have we do, is Facebook. And so Facebook happens to be the third most visited website after Google, after YouTube. You got Facebook. And so why is that? Well, we touched on that earlier in our conversation when it comes to the technology footprint, and that was the ability to see what their friends, what some of their trusted loved ones, and some of the others around them in their communities are doing for any particular item, such as insurance, etc. And so, you want to make sure that you have a tremendous footprint and that you're making yourself available to our millennials from an electronic technology perspective, and make it intuitive and easy for them to do business with. And it's not just good enough for it to be good, quick, fast, and cheap, but it's got to also be positive, and that you have great reviews, and that your focus is customer centric. And so with that being said, guys, these are the 6 ways that we've adjusted to millennials. And so before we break for the last 2 questions, I did want to take a quick break to provide a mention to our sponsor today. And our sponsor today is Solstice Benefits. And so let me talk to you guys a little bit about them. They are the little giant in the ancillary benefits world. They've been around for just a little over 21 years, and they represent doing business nationally at this point for both the DHMO, the PPO, vision, as well as other ancillary benefits such as short and long-term basic and other life products. And so one of the keys to their growth has been their 110% growth in the national network avenue, as they have been growing from state to state, growing their network presence. And so one of the things that has allowed Solstice to be able to do this is their customer-centric focus. And as you can see here, they were awarded the Account Management Team of the Year for 2020 by the Stevie Awards. And so what this means to our consumers, for those that do business with Solstice Benefits, is that you can expect a great personalized service, allowing you to take advantage of your overall wellness via your dental and vision benefits. And so Solstice firmly believes that your health starts at the mouth, and that your eyes are your windows to life. And so what makes Solstice unique and has helped grow this footprint is that we are an open access network. And so what that means to you as a consumer is that you do not need to be assigned to any particular office. If you have a need today, you can simply be seen. You do not need to be wait to be seen or basically appointed to an office, or that you're going to be placed on some sort of roster. There is no provider capitation, basically driving to provide open appointments for you as the consumer. and currently licensed in the states that you see listed there, such as Arizona, Florida, Illinois, New Jersey, Tennessee, Colorado, Georgia, Ohio, New York, and Texas, and growing. And so, again, we wanted to thank you and thank Solstice for being our sponsor today. And so with that being said, let's transition off to our last two questions of the day before we open up to a general session of Q&A. And so our last two questions for engagement of our continuing education today are, okay, let me get those for you. Your first question is going to be true or false. And our first question of the day, Lord. So true or false, first question of our last two questions here are, millennials will move on if you do not have a good digital presence. Go ahead and take the time to provide your response right in our Q&A. And I'll give you guys just a moment to go ahead and answer those before I ask our last question. All right, and our last question here, guys. What are the 3 keys to our millennials' consumerism? All right, guys, you can still continue to go ahead and place your questions in our your responses in your Q&A, but I wanted to make sure to save just a few moments, and we'll still stay online after the 1 p.m. mark to answer any questions you may have. And so at this point, we'll go ahead and open it up to Q&A, so whatever questions you guys may have for us. And so while we await some questions from you guys, I just wanted to close up with just wanting to let you know, if you have the desire or wish to engage with Solstice Benefits, here's our contact information. And just wanted to provide you guys a couple of reminders here that we do need you to take the form. We're going to send that by close of business today. We're going to send you the form, the continuing education form. And what we need from you is your first and last name, your license number. You got it, your insurance license, not your driver's license, and your signature. And please have those back to us no later than May 24th, which is next Tuesday, close of business. Team, we have a question on the table, and the question is, will you be receiving a copy of this presentation today? And the answer to that is yes. So not only will you receive a copy of the PowerPoint that we've presented to you today, as well as the recording that we have here, so you'll get to see my lovely face once again. All right, team. Well, thank you so much. Great participation this afternoon. If you have no further questions, you can feel free to log off. We've got everything that we need from you at this point. If you've responded to our questions and attended the full hour with us, outside from that, thank you again. We look forward to future meetings with you, and we'll go from there. Happy selling, everyone. Thank you again.